Hi, welcome everybody to a Super Monday edition of the Big Douglas Show. George Carney, as always, is the co-host Joe, and our guest today, Lou Holder and Ed Albert. Fellas, another Super Bowl in the books. I thought yesterday was a great one. You'll forgive me. I showed up on the injury list this morning with a bug. I promise I wasn't yelling at the TV, nor was I breaking it. Lou, what did you think about that game last night? Got to overtime and everything.
Yeah, I can't again coming in. I sentimentally I wanted San Francisco to win. I'm a Trent Williams fan. I wanted him to at least get one championship. I just love the fact that the team that Adam Peters built over there is what he's going to try to build here. So it was kind of like cool seeing all those parts together. But man, when you see what Andy Reid and Kansas City has done, especially this year, Buffalo was better than them. They went in there and they beat them. Baltimore was better than them. They went in there and they beat them. As long as 15 and Andy Reid are in concert with one another, I have stopped giving up on them. I'm like, they're going to find a way to finish it up. And even when they weren't playing that well and there was some mistakes, whatever, I was like, they're going to find a way to win this thing. So it was competitive, which was good. The overtime, which was good. I feel bad for the injuries that happened to San Francisco. I just felt that there was some parts of the game where I thought they could have played better and had better awareness in the overtime of what was going on. You're hearing all kind of things come out that they didn't know the rules or things of that nature. You'd hate that had a stain on it. But for the most part, I thought that the two best teams were, there. And I just thought that it was a drag out kind of game. And I had no problems with it. I had no problems with didn't have a real dog in the fight per se, but I had no problems with the fact that it was competitive.
And it becomes real obvious that there were two ways of doing things last night. It showed there was this 49ers came in with a really deep team, the better team, and the Chiefs came in with Patrick Mahomes. And we should never again bet against the Chiefs while Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback, because they've done it a bunch of different ways. I mean, this was Patrick Mahomes and a bunch of guys you never heard of on offense and a really good defense. I'm surprised that Spagnuolo has not gotten more looks at head coaching jobs with the work he's done there. The defense was great. Ed, what was it? Anything in particular that stuck out to you about the game last night?
There was so much. It was a defensive struggle in that first half. You saw tempers flaring with Kelsey bumping Andy Reid. You saw Pat Mahomes going back and forth with Rashee Rice is how you pronounce it. But yeah, Pat Mahomes' greatness, man. That last drive where he scrambled up the middle to get him in the red zone, and then a great play call where McCole Hardman did the motion and got the touchdown. I mean, the Chiefs, they do it again, and they don't have the best receiving core or the best offensive line, but just Pat Mahomes, and the defense stepped up. Trent McDuffie was huge. And yeah, it was some uncharacteristic things happened, like Pacheco fumbling. Christian McCaffrey, we rarely see him fumble, so I was shocked to see both those guys fumble in the red zone. So it was a little rusty in that first half, but second half they picked up. I think there was a blocked field goal or extra point. That was huge there. And that helped to go to overtime. So, I mean, yeah, Andy Reid finds a way. Kelsey had a big game towards the end. And, of course, we saw a couple of Taylor Swift cameos there. But, yeah, the Chiefs, man, Pat Mahomes, he has 3 rings. And, I'm just going to enjoy it. I'm not going to compare him to Tom Brady and everything like that. But, man, he definitely is a special player, man. The Chiefs, they win again. And I bet on the Chiefs to win money line. So I knew they were going to win again.
George, it's interesting. I saw somebody post earlier. Basically, it said, I'm not worried about what the Chiefs do in the regular season anymore. But as long as they get to the dance, that's pretty much all that matters. Lou pointed out earlier, it was the hardest road to get to the Super Bowl in like a decade or something like that. Like those two teams they went in and battled against. And it's interesting. We were talking, George, about we got on air. I saw they put the overhead version from the All-22 out from what looked like an RPO. It was not. It was a keeper the whole time. That's what happens when you have of Mahomes. And I think it's interesting. Cam Newton took a lot of flack some weeks back talking about the difference between the Brock Purdy's and the Patrick Mahomes. There's nothing wrong with being a game manager at all. But I think it's clear to see there's a difference between a game manager and a game changer. You have Mahomes, he changes the game, and you expect to score touchdowns when you get within eyesight of it.
Absolutely. And I think for one, we have to kind of give Brock Purdy some credit, right? I feel like all year long, people were kind of criticizing him, game manager, not necessarily a talented quarterback, like system quarterback as well. I thought yesterday he was pretty elusive. I thought he created on his own. I thought he was timely, had some big first downs in regard to that. So props to him. But, there's a clear discrepancy between Brock Purdy and Patrick Mahomes, right? I think Tony Romo did a great job kind of building the drama, building the aura of Patrick Mahomes. He talked about it. He's like, I think he even said it. He's like, if you're a 49ers fan and, you're watching the TV right now, the last person on earth you want taking the field is Patrick Mahomes with the ball in his hand. And he's exactly right. And it was kind of a great moment in time. Like, as a football fan, just like Lou mentioned, I didn't have any horse in the race. I'm just kind of watching this game just for fun and just watching that just talented player just take the ball and put the responsibility in his own hands and move down the field was, it was exceptional. It was just fun to watch. And just like you said, Doug, going into this, the Chiefs, I believe from week 12 to 17, Warren Sharp every single year talks about rest advantages for play and for teams, right? I think from 12 to 17, every team, because of the bye, the Chiefs had a rest deficit going against their opponent. So they were under-rested going against an opponent. They were road dogs against the Ravens. They were underdogs throughout the playoffs. And you kind of have to have that championship aura, right? I think the Chiefs, they played a pretty bad first half even, right? They weren't necessarily strong, but when it came out of crunch time, having that championship pedigree, having that calmness took them over the top. It was a fun game altogether. It was just overtime, Super Bowl Sunday. That was awesome. Can't complain one bit.
Lou, it was a halftime show for the ages in my mind. How did you find it?
Well, my fraternity brothers were right behind Usher, so I mean that was a surprise for me. I thought that he did a great job as far as encapsulating all of, I guess, the ATL in his performance. Alicia Keys is very easy on the eyes to look
Absolutely.
at. So roller skating, everything. I mean, it just keeps getting better and better. I mean, Rihanna last year, pregnant up in the air, 2 years ago with Snoop and Dr. Dre. I mean, it just keeps getting better and better. I mean, it's just a lot of people. And Doug and guys, it's like an experience depending on where you are, right? So that sometimes I've watched the Super Bowl at home by myself, with the family. And other times you go to a Super Bowl party. This year, I happened to go to a Super Bowl party, and there was something for everybody. The ladies love Usher. The guys love the game. The kids just, vacillated in between. I mean, it was just a lot. It's the reason why it's the most watched sporting event in our country every single year, because there's a little bit for everybody. So there was a couple of Usher songs that didn't make it onto the list, like Good Kisser. I love that song and some others. But I mean, I could not be upset about what I saw as a performance. I wasn't expecting a full concert by him. I was expecting him to just rattle off some hits. And when you got Ludacris and all them showing up, and her was outstanding.
It was great.
So,
The guitar was great.
It just had a little bit of everything. But at the end of the day, when members of Kappa Alpha Psi showed up that I had all my frat brothers that were in the room last night. We were a little prideful, like, interest in our fraternity is automatically going to go up now.
That's awesome.
That's right. That's right. It's just the name of this episode is jealousy. I am jealous of those two organizations and where they stand. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the one that we talk about the most, and that is our Commanders. Understand that we don't have a quarterback. We're not comparing ourselves to the Chiefs by any means. But I am curious what your thoughts are, how close this organization can be to just being a stand-up organization. That's where we're at now. That will be nice. I think the winning will come. But just getting the organization back to the respectability that it was once known for, I think is where we're at now, starting now.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
it's definitely going to take some time. But I think we have some really, really respectable hires with Adam Peters and Dan Quinn. You look at Cliff Kingsbury, same thing with Joe Witt Jr. on the defensive side of the ball. But Adam Peters is so respectable. Like, there's surveys talking about, just him as a person, him as a in the front office, like the top 40 under 40 list as far as like front office people, young, innovative minds, that were on their way up, and he's finally moved up into the general manager position. So there's peer surveys from players, agents that have said great things about Adam Peters. And that's the thing that kind of went wrong with Ron, where we just didn't have that structure where it was a coach-centric structure, where Dan Quinn now, he can just let the player personnel duties go to Adam Peters. But as far as being respectable, I mean, Josh Harris, just the change from Snyder to Josh Harris is going to be huge. So the narrative around the league is going to change. The new stadium coming, that's going to take some time, but that certainly will help with FedEx not having, water come out of the stadium, sewage or whatever was coming out of the stadium and whatnot. So there's a lot of things that Josh Harris has on his plate, and even bringing him Bob Myers as an advisor, Magic Johnson as a part owner, Mitchell Rels. I mean, those are some really huge, respectable people that have a lot of weight. Magic Johnson, he was the one that got Cliff Kingsbury to come here. So that was huge. So a lot of these guys are super respectable, have great personalities, respectable personalities that people just gravitate to. So that's a huge help with this front office. The wins, of course, are the huge thing. Those will come. But just the people in the front office that are making decisions are super, respectable people.
Lou, you're in the building. I've heard from others that are also in the building that the vibe is palpable. The change is noticeable. How have you felt it inside the building?
I mean, it's just what Ed had mentioned. I mean, people in the building understand that the most important hire in this cycle was getting Adam Peters. He was, again, one of the most coveted people, and he wanted to come here. You see what I'm saying? There's two parts to that, because this is a call that some people, they wouldn't even pick up the phone for the Commanders / Washington football team / Redskins for the last, some odd years. But now it's kind of like, you have that perfect blend that Adam Peters needed. He needed the cap space. He needed the number 2 pick. He needed to know that there was talent in the building. He's not coming here, with that not all being in place. So I think that this roster has talent on it. I just felt that they just tapped out because the coaching was just not there. And it is, you sometimes need that real culture to happen for players to run through that brick wall and play like they're on a different level. That's what you saw on the field last night. You saw a roster that Adam Peters built. Adam Peters built what San Fran was most of what San Fran was there. And then Andy Reid on the other end. I mean, you see both, like you said, Doug, you saw both the organizations, just the culture there. You want to play. You want to play at a higher level, and you have accountability there. And I just think in the building, you're seeing that. You're seeing that, wow, Adam Peters is here. That means more good stuff is coming. And remember, the first year with Adam Peters and Lynch and all them, they were not very good. They were not very good in San Francisco. It was that second and third year. And I think the people who cover the team, the people that are in the building, know that Adam Peters, whatever he does, I might not agree with everything, but at least you know who's calling the shots. And at least you know that there is a competent man there calling the shots. So at that point, I'm just like, okay, let's just patience and wait and see how this thing works out. But I think that the culture, the immediate turnaround, you'll see it on the field as soon as next year, because Adam Peters is going to have a whole offseason to work with. The Harris group got this team like 2 days before training camp, a day before training camp. Now they have a chance to put all of those minds together and see how it's actually going to work. I think this is a really exciting time in Washington, and it's not just lip service. I think you can actually say that there's a lot to look forward to.
I agree. Ed, George and I talk on the podcast all the time as of late, about how much of a bump some of the guys on the roster get immediately, like an Emmanuel Forbes. I'm curious your thoughts just kind of on what a new set of eyes, a fresh perspective can bring to some of these guys. Well, I think the fan base feels could and should be performing at a higher level.
Yeah, Forbes is going to be huge. He definitely had a roller coaster year for sure. The 2 Eagles games, he struggled against A.J. Brown, and the Thursday night game against DJ Moore with the Bears, he struggled in those games. There was times where he, was behind Ben St. Juste and could barely get on the field. So that's huge for Joe Witt Jr. coming here for him. You saw what he did with Deron Bland with the Cowboys, forcing turnovers. You saw what he did with Trayvon Diggs. Trayvon Diggs was, he had a big season before Dan Quinn came, but they helped him develop and be a great player and have a knack for forcing turnovers. Stephon Gilmore had a good year under Joe Witt Jr. and Dan Quinn, and he's in one of his last years coming up for his career. So he still had a good season. You look at Michael Parsons. Can he kind of get Jamin Davis just attacking and not thinking too much? He used Michael Parsons as a chess piece. I'm not comparing him to Jamin Davis, but I'm just saying, can he get the best out of that linebacker position in Jamin Davis? He said in this press conference he doesn't want guys thinking too much. He wants to simplify the game. And that was kind of one of the knocks on Jack Del Rio that guys were complaining about, that he just had him out there thinking too much. So if Dan Quinn, if he practices what he preaches with just simplifying the game for the guys, I think that would be helpful for Jamin Davis for sure. Because when Jamin Davis is playing downhill, just playing with speed, that's when he's at his best, man. And I think Dan Quinn, that's where we're hoping for him to get the best out of him. Forbes will be huge. Kendall Fuller, we'll see what happens with him coming back. Cam Curler free agents, we'll see what happens with those guys. But I think you're really looking at the linebacker position, man, because that's something that we kind of haven't really had consistency for really a lot of Ron Rivera's tenure here, to be honest. It was, really mostly that Buffalo nickel. That's really what we've been looking at.
And that's so frustrating because he was a linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Him and Del Rio were both
too,
linebackers, and that linebacker that he played was on one of the best teams ever in the NFL, and that was the Achilles heel of that whole defense. Was the linebackers were just trash.
Mm-hmm. And then John Allen and Daron Payne, are they going to stay? Or because John Allen, the whole thing was like, because he went on the radio and was like, he's thought about requesting a trade and stuff like that. So he was being honest, which I understand because he's a winner. He went to Bama, won in high school, and he comes here and we only made the playoffs one time that he's been here. So I understand his frustration. So as Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr., those guys can make him want to stay and buy in. I know he was on the Radio Row again, that show that the local radio had again. It was like on the stage and whatnot, where he said I think he said he wants to stay or something like that. So yeah, that's huge getting Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. I think they're gonna help guys develop for sure.
George, this is the current list here. Any names that stand out in particular to you?
So I actually kind of like the team, the kind of the coaching construct that we have here, right? Like we talked about it offline before we actually went live. We talked about the pursuit of trying to find a head coach, right? We talked about Ben Johnson and missing out on that opportunity potentially. But what I think really factored into the whole Harris ownership group getting Dan Quinn was the fact that he could get some talent together and put a nice coaching staff together. That was very appealing to them, right? Looking up here, I think we do have a nice little combination. Like Cliff Kingsbury is definitely intriguing to me. I love his connections to there's plenty of connections with plenty of the top quarterbacks in the draft, right? We have the obvious connection with Caleb Williams being the offensive consultant for USC, excuse me. He has a connection with Longo from UNC with the whole air raid offense with Drake May. So we have that whole connection there as well. I do think that's interesting there. I'm happy that we got Joe Witt, as kind of Ed alluded to, because I think the Cowboys secondary, like one thing I was jealous about the Cowboys secondary altogether is they were hard hitting and they created turnovers. And we never create turnovers in DC. The fact that these secondary players were like, Deron Bland is like the NFL record holder for pick sixes, right? He's a 5th round pick. And, Dan Quinn elevated to that level. I love that. To me, that screams scheme, not necessarily like athletic talent. So I just think that the fact that with Emmanuel Forbes, who is a ball hawk, he'll be more in cover 3 zone as opposed to the whole man coverage we had last year. So that's intriguing. And the last thing I'll kind of say before I pitch it to the fellas is I like the fact that there is a succession in place, right? So one thing we talked about, we've been hearing about through the whole coaching carousel is, let's say an offensive coordinator shines in DC and he potentially leaves, what will we do to replace him, right? I know that's kind of optimistic. Like, I hope that happens in DC because we haven't had that potential in so long, right? But I was listening to John Keim today, and John Keim said that was an appeal for Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn talked about his succession process, right? We see Kingsbury, great offensive line, focusing on the offense. Maybe he'll truly shine in this role and potentially get another job somewhere else, right? We have Brian Johnson, who potentially was was an offensive coordinator in the Eagles. He has experience as a quarterback's coach. He can potentially fill in that role. We have Davita Pritchard, who was at Stanford. He was a quarterback's coach. He was an offensive coordinator. He could potentially fill that role as well. So there is a kind of a safety net in regard to offensive projections moving forward, which is actually really interesting because we have a defensive coach. So I like that. I think the coaching staff is coming together pretty well.
Yeah, I think tomorrow we take a look at Cliff Kingsbury on the All 22 film for the Tuesday show.
Mm-hmm.
And then it'll be with Mark Bullock, which I think will be interesting. It is a list of let's do it agains. Lou, most of these guys are on their second go rounds in a league where everybody wants the next shiny new thing. This ain't that.
Yeah, I mean, guys, I go back and forth with that. I really wanted to see a new, fresh face of people. I really did, but obviously Dan Quinn, he won the press conference. He said all the right things. I do like the fact that, we've all been in situations where you're not the first choice. We know that he wasn't the first choice. We've all been in situations where you're not the first choice, but it is your time. It is your season. It is your time. So I'm happy about that. I'm also happy that, that Joe Witt is there as well. That means that he is going to be a manager and a teacher, like he said in his press conference, and he's not going to be running the defense. He's going to give that to Joe Witt. And I do think that secondary, that's a place where this team had a lot of talent. I mean, obviously, there was some injuries there with Defoe and some other things that happened. But I mean, at the end of the day, at the end of last year coming in, they were like on the cusp of being a top 10 defense. And it just went totally bad. But I just feel that maybe the fact that some of these coaches have some history, they'll come in with a newness, but also a little bit of experience as well. And that's what this probably team needs. Again, Adam Peters, I don't question too much about what he's doing. I will. I know you're discussing tomorrow with Kingsbury. I just hope that this isn't you mentioned the whole Caleb Williams. I hope this isn't one of those things where we give up a whole bunch of capital to go get this one player. If Kingsbury is supposed to be this person that has worked with Mahomes and that has worked with so many others, Murray, then he should be able to coach May if he's there, or Jalen Daniels if he's there. I do not want to see this team, if anything, trade back and get more picks, because this whole Adam Peters thing, the thing that's the most intriguing, and while I'm smiling, is that any pick that Adam Peters has a potential, even as a Mr. Irrelevant, to do good things in the NFL, and to give it up to go up one space or whatever to get a quarterback that you don't even know, even with Kingsbury, is going to be successful in the NFL, but you have all this other capital to build parts around him. Man, you could even keep Sam Howell for another year as a stopgap and trade down and get more picks. It's all a matter of.
You're going to make the fan base angry.
Huh? I'm just saying that if you have pieces around this quarterback, whoever the quarterback is, that is the success of any franchise. Look at all the success that you're finding with teams around the NFL. I mean, the game of football has not changed. If you can get to the other team's quarterback and protect your own quarterback, you're going to be halfway successful in the NFL. And that was just not the case in Washington last year. So I like the coaches, and I like how this thing is all developing. I just hope that the when it comes time for the draft, that is where all the pieces are going to come together, that they get many parts and they get the free agents that they need to jumpstart whatever quarterback's back there.
And nobody knows the Wizards quite like you do. The Dan Quinn hiring to me is like the typical Josh Harris hire if you're looking at the other organizations that he owns. Am I wrong on that? I mean, it looks like the perfect hiring for him.
Well, yeah, they they did have Doc Rivers. They did have they just got Nick Nurse, who was let go by the Raptors, who won a championship. So that kind of goes into it, Josh Harris and the front office with the Sixers have hired guys who have been to championships. Like I said, Doc Rivers, Nick Nurse. So yes, they are, the retread, coach that everybody kind of, like you said, the fan base doesn't like, but retreads have been successful. Bill Belichick was a retread. It didn't work out with the Browns. He moved over to the Patriots, and the rest is history there. He's in the Hall of Fame, or a future Hall of Famer for sure. So yeah, I have no problem with hiring Dan Quinn. Is it the shiny new toy like you guys brought up in Ben Johnson or Mike McDonald or Bobby Slowick? No, it's not. But big thing that Lou said is, Dan is a guy that wants to be here. Dan Quinn, you want people that want to be here. You don't want people that, are, texting you on a plane mid-flight and saying that, they don't want to come here anymore or they're out of the running. So I think some guys eliminated themselves, and that was a good thing. It was a good thing by elimination or him taking himself out. And we found a guy that wants to be here. And I think Dan Quinn, he learned a lot from his time with the Falcons. You saw what he did with Dallas' defense. So I think he'll definitely have ways where he can be better as a head coach. For sure. So I don't mind them taking another guy who was at another place before as the retread thing. And then another thing about the list with the coaching staff, I do want to address some of the hirings they made today. They did hire another guy named John Pagano. That news just came out. Not sure if you guys saw that. Ben Albright had that first. He's going to be a senior defensive assistant. And the guy, Bobby Johnson, as well, the offensive line coach. Not the biggest fan of that hire. I know you guys have
pretty unpopular, for whatever reason, right?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts, Ed? Why?
Well, you look at the Giants' offensive line, so it's easy to look at the sack numbers. The Giants clearly gave up 85 sacks, which is like the second most in history. And then the game that they beat us with Tommy DeVito was like a game where they gave up the most sacks in one, with Tommy DeVito. So you look at Andrew Thomas, he's had a good career, but some of the other guys, Evan Neal hasn't really developed like he's supposed to. The center, John Michael Schmitz, hasn't really developed the way he's supposed to. So, Bobby Johnson, or OG Bobby Johnson, like the song, he did a good job with the Bills, but what went wrong with the Giants? So I'm not going to base his whole resume or his coaching prowess just on one stop, but we just got to be objective. We're not going to say every hire is a good hire. You have to be honest about things. So,
I agree to that.
We'll see what happens. I give him the benefit of the doubt, though. And we got a lot of work we got to do with this offensive line. It's going to be a lot of fresh faces, a lot of new guys on this offensive line for sure.
Amen. And in fairness, the center that you were referencing, I think, went down in like week 3.
He went down.
I think they had a fair amount of injuries to that.
They did, line. And a lot of quarterbacks got hurt. Daniel Jones got hurt. Tyrod got hurt.
Yeah.
The one big concern I have with this coaching staff is there definitely is a lot of experience and they've had some success other places. It's hard to bring everyone together. Are they going to be in sync? Are they going to be unified? Like, there's a whole bunch of ideas. It is a think tank of people working together, but I don't know if they're going to work well together. That's definitely something they have to iron out the first year. I mean, it's going to be people expect a big jump. People are very optimistic. Some people are more objective and think it's going to be a transition. I think I'm more of the latter. I don't think it's going to be a very smooth transition, at least early on, because none of these people have actually worked together. They respect each other. Like Dan Quinn respects Cliff Kingsbury, but how are they going to delegate the whole practice facility, practice situations and stuff like that? I am kind of concerned about that. We'll see how it breaks down.
Yeah, I saw an interview with Matt Ryan on Radio Row this week, and somebody asked about Dan Quinn, and he said, "What I can tell you is, after the first year with Dan Quinn in Atlanta, it had felt like he had been traded to another organization and just showed up to the same facilities every day. Like, that's the impact that Dan Quinn had in the first year. It just felt totally new, even though it wasn't new, and that kind of got me excited."
Yeah. I think that everybody, even Michael Parsons, said, I would want to come to Washington to play for. I mean, he definitely is a coach that the players respect. I like the fact that he did say that it was a recalibration, just finding a new North Star. Again, he won the press conference with a lot of words that, I think that if you look objectively at the football team and then you look at I think Ed mentioned Slowick, and you look at, all the stuff that happened in Houston in 1 year. You get the right coach, you get the quarterback, and you get some parts around it. This turnaround can happen. But I am on the camp of what George said. I think this year is going to be one of just a feeling out. I really, really do hope people are patient and thinking that, wow, that this is going to happen overnight. It's not. That's why this whole thing has never worked here, because people want an overnight. They don't want to build anything, right? Building things take time, right? And that's not going to happen overnight. And that's why I'm glad that Adam Peters is there to make sure that he's building something here, that in 2-3 years from now, then we can look back and be like, okay, now it's time. Now it's way past time that you're supposed to be there with. You're not starting with a cupboard that's absolutely bare. You have a lot of talent that's there that just wasn't used correctly, and that's your job. If what Dan Quinn is saying is correct, that he wants to coach and he wants to supervise and he wants to inspire, well, that's what you do in that first year, to get Terry and to get Jahan Dotson, who was on a milk carton for most of the past year, and to get, Cole Turner, who I was like, how is that tight end just like so good and
even
then
active,
so
yeah.
bad
Yeah.
that he can't even get on the field at the end of the game? People are out of place. People had just given up. Jonathan Allen is saying things left and right. He wants to stay. I'm in the building. I see this. There's no way that he doesn't want to stay, but he's just tired of the same stuff over and over and over again. And now I'm hoping that now that there is no Bruce Allen, there's no Dan Snyder, there's nothing. The owner and the GM and the head coach and the quarterback are all going to hopefully be on the same wavelength and on the same signal. Then everything else can fall into place, like we've seen here in Washington before. I know it's history for us, but it's good to sometimes have a history, because that's what we know it could be.
Lou, could you feel it? Could you feel it in the locker room when you went there, like near the end of the year, just kind of lack of energy? And like, from what I gathered from the outside looking in, there seemed to be like some tension, and people were kind of like pointing fingers, and there was some anger and frustrations. Like, I don't know, did you feel that? Did you sense it?
I felt it.
When did it start? Did it happen after the whole Chase Young Montez Sweat trade, or like when did it happen? When did you start feeling it?
I definitely started feeling it after that Seattle game.
Okay.
I definitely started, because there is a large group of people who are still just really, really befuddled that why Sam Howell was even in there when Jacoby Brissett. The thing that really came to a head for me was when Jacoby Brissett went to the podium the week he was supposed to start against San Francisco, and he said that I thought this was going to be an open quarterback competition. Right? That told me everything. That confirmed to me everything that we thought, that, hey, look, he was running Eric Bieniemy's offense with the same people better than Sam Howell was, right? And it was like, there wasn't a chance to see what this team could have been like, and that was the frustration. Again, why was Jahan Dotson only getting one catch per game, where his first year he was lighting things up, right? Why was Terry so inconsistent? It's like systemic. That offensive line, Cosme's the only one that I would actually consider just like, that's a no-toucher for me. But everybody else, it's like, things just snowball. They have that analogy where things just snowball out of control. That's what it was like in the locker room. And then when you have people asking the same questions, which is our job, right, about Ron, which, the worst thing you could have is a lame duck head coach, which was Ron, from day one. We knew that this ownership thing and you had to have some statement games. Ron never had those statement games. I give Ron a lot of credit for the time that he was here and the stuff that he had to manage that was outside of football, like all the other junk. He respectfully got through that. But there was a time where you're just like, Ron's on borrowed time, and then everybody else felt that too. Who's leading this team?
It was definitely a weird dynamic, right? Everyone kind of knew that Ron Rivera was going to be gone by the end of the year, but everyone was kind of going. Like, I understand what Josh Harris was trying to be respectful to the coach and kind of prove to the league, hey, I'm a patient owner. I'm going to kind of sit it out and kind of watch my coach develop. But it did become difficult because I think the players knew it, and it kind of created a bad message in the locker room, in my opinion. But, it seemed tough.
Well, it was one of the first things Peter said, too, right? It was like, we just needed some more responsibility in the building, like voices to be heard. And it was obvious that message got lost. Ed, as we kind of switch to basketball, let's just spend a couple of minutes talking about the
Yeah.
What's up, Ed? I'm ready.
Is it harder to root for the Commanders or the Wiz these days?
Oh goodness, yeah, the Wizards are there. I'm sorry, because I do the show, as you know, every night. Locked On Wizards. It's hard to watch, man. It's hard to watch when they get blown out by 20 or 30 points. Really in the third quarter, they're waving the white flag and they put the bench in, and so it's tough to watch that. Especially you got one rookie in Bilal. It's more fun when you have a lot of young guys who are getting better, but it's kind of like a mix of some veterans in there. But man, yeah, they're going to get a top 3 pick, if not the first pick of the draft. This draft is not a great draft. That's the unfortunate part.
Last year, the best year to have the first pick.
Last year was the draft to go all in for Wemby, and they actually missed the lottery to get Wemby by point something.
It was one really ball close. Or something. Yeah, exactly. It's crazy.
Yeah. So the Wizards, we never get any good luck at all. Then you look at Porzingis with the Celtics; he's having a great season, of course, and whatnot. So, but it's a rebuild. They traded Gafford. They actually play against Gafford tonight with the Mavericks. I think he's going to do a great job with Luka and Kyrie. I mean, they're going to love him. He's going to get a lot of easy baskets from Luka and Kyrie. That's like a dream to have. To be a big man and play with those two guys, it's just going to be the easiest job in the world. So I'm happy for him to get out of DC and play for a winning team. I know we talked about the city and the possible move to Virginia. There was actually something that came out today where a Senate or somebody in the office is basically stopping that from happening right now. So it's not going to happen anytime soon. I know Ted was super excited about that, and it looks like it's not going to happen anytime soon now. Where I actually thought it was going to happen. When they first came out with it, I was like, okay, this is really going to happen, but it looks like it's gotten stalled out right now.
And were you surprised they weren't more active at the deadline?
That is something they should have traded Tyus, in my opinion. They should have tried. They had suitors for DeLon Wright, but they said that they had to take on a second-round pick and salary. They don't want to take back any money, which is understandable. It's a rebuild. DeLon was the guy that I thought they should have moved, but there wasn't much value for him. There was 4 second-round picks offered by the Timberwolves for Tyus Jones, but they denied that trade. They wanted a first-round pick. You're not going to get a first-round pick for Tyus. They probably should have just taken that trade and just moved on. They got Bagley, and I love Bagley. I love Bagley coming out of Duke. I think he's a good player, but he's always going to be compared to Luka and Trae Young and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was drafted after Bagley too. He's like the 10th pick, so it's kind of unfair for him in that draft. But he's playing well, man. He's playing really good basketball. He's got a couple double-doubles. But, they got a long way to go. Kuzma was a guy that they were close to trading to the same team, to the Mavericks. They had a deal on the table, but for whatever reason it fell through. It was going to be a first-round pick. So, they weren't very active, but you got to remember they traded for Bagley. They traded Muscala and Gallo, who were like they were untradeable to me. I thought they were going to be buyout candidates, but they actually got something for him and for those guys and second-round picks. So I'm not mad at the trade deadline. I know a lot of fans are not happy about it because they want to see a lot of wheeling and dealing at the deadline, and that just didn't happen. So I'm giving these guys the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I remember when I first got here to this market, Ted Leonsis, it was when Ole Kolzig was the goalie, and he basically said he basically said that we're going to tear this whole thing apart and we're going to rebuild. And I remember, I just got to the market, I was like, ooh, that was just strong from an owner to say, yo, we're going to stink for a while and get better. Ed, do you actually think that's going to happen with the Wizards? Like, I mean, we talked, Doug talked about an owner with Josh Harris, he has multiple entities and whatever. This 2 ownership thing that he has going on with the Wizards and the Caps. I mean, do you actually think, with the new pieces in place and everything like that, free agents can want to come here and that, you can get better, like Ted Leonsis said with the Caps?
Yeah, I think they're actually
real quick. And that's always been the thing that befuddles me the most is you would think that DC would be an attractive market
Yeah.
for young kids to want to come live and hang out and play. And
Yeah.
I have never understood how that has been so tough to get guys to come to DC, but they don't come.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I mean, you got a guy who was born and raised in, well, actually, no, I want to say he was born in Texas, if I'm not mistaken, but raised in PG County in Kevin Durant. And, you know, he doesn't even take a meeting with us, which is just so disrespectful. I just can't forgive, even though Kevin Durant's a Commanders fan, I just can never forgive him for that, you know? And that was actually when the Wizards were competitive with John Wall and Bradley Beal. John Wall hit the big shot against the Celtics. And Kevin Durant still chose not to go here. So for whatever reason, it's so weird. Yeah, DC should be a destination. It's a nice city and all that. Nightlife is good for young guys. Young guys love coming. I mean, look at John Wall. He was caught up in the nightlife here. So, I mean, it's not like it's a boring city. But, yeah, to answer your question, Lou, yeah, I think he actually is letting this team build it from the studs. They traded Bradley Beal, and I know that front office loved Bradley Beal. They gave him the no-trade clause, key to the city. Whatever he asked for, they gave it to Bradley Beal, and they finally decided to move on. They moved Porzingis, so they are rebuilding and they're trying to get as many draft picks as they can get. So yeah, they're taking the slow approach to this. And you look back at it, the only reason why we even got good with the Wizards before was because John Wall was the first pick of the draft. We got lucky with that. Bradley Beal was the third pick of the draft. So we're a destination. You just have to build through the draft, and nobody is going to want to come here, man. It's just I had to face the reality of that. Nobody really. Until we really become competitive again, that's the only way. I think the only free agent you can really pinpoint that came here was Paul Pierce. He's the only guy that's ever really, as of recent note, was a free agent, had other deals on the table, and was like, okay, I want to come to DC. That's the last free agent I can remember.
Yeah, it's easy. It's people don't like to talk about it, but Lou, you brought up the cap just a little bit. The fact is, if Giannis doesn't get Ovechkin at 1. But it's not like they've drafted super well with those teams.
Yeah.
He just happened to land one of the greatest hockey players of the last 30 years.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to do that with the Wizards as well. And they probably waited 3 years too long on that rebuild.
Yeah.
For the Wizards at any rate. Fellas, the season is over. But now the season just begins as we move on to all the other fun things that's happening. And George, really, I think we probably get back to action early. I was trying to look today, but first time coaching groups get to go early, so we're probably back in action like in a month or two.
Yeah, something like that. And plus, the NFL Combine's coming up pretty soon. Like the NFL knows how to make it a 365 business, as Luke kind of alluded to before. They know what they're doing. So I think the Combine is going to be coming up. There's going to be the draft process coming up. There's going to be, training camps. There's going to be a whole bunch of different things. And as you mentioned, Doug, yes, as a new head coach, I believe they give us an extra week, I think, earlier on to kind of get your bearings before the draft to kind of get a feel for who you should be, plus free agency is coming up in March, I believe, too. So we have a lot to talk about.
Lou, what do you got going on now that the season is over? You take a minute and regroup, or you right on to the next?
Man, right on to the next. I mean, right now it's I just I'm really excited about women's basketball, to be quite honest. I just feel that what Maryland is doing, what Brenda Frese is doing, what Maryland is doing on both ends. You just move to the next. The storylines are always there. That's why I love sports, and especially in this town. I mean, Ed, you were talking about it, and Doug, you were talking about it too. This area is so rich in athletic, opportunities. I mean, think about it. Jakia Brown-Turner, she left NC State. She had one more year of eligibility, and she's now playing, her last year at Maryland. And that game that Caitlin Clark came to the Xfinity Center, I mean, that was electric, and it's like it's good to get a break from the Commanders every now and then and see all the other stuff that's going on. I did go to the Sixers Wizards game, and even with I mean, I know Embiid wasn't there and everything like that, but Bilal, I mean, they got some talent there. It's just like, you go to these games and you're hoping that you see some brilliance there. You're hoping you see the next Backstrom, you see the next Ovi, you see the next whatever. So right now it's like I'm looking forward to, the CIAA tournament in basketball, and then, what March Madness is going to take. And then, as you said, George, the NFL has done a great job of keeping that product in our face 365 days, a year. So before you know it, we will be back out at Ashburn doing what we do.
Quickly before we get out of here, Ed, are they going to move Bilal's usage up at all, do you think? Maybe you think it's right where it should be? I don't know.
Yeah, I think he needs the ball in his hands a little bit more. He is a rookie. He's had a couple up and downs. He's kind of hit a rookie wall. But the last game, he had 20 points. I want to say if not the Sixers game, it was one game where he had 20. He had a good game. I want to say it was the Celtics game. He just had 21 points and 13 boards. Bilal had a really good game. Corey Kispert, man, he's been playing really well too. He had 26 points. I mean, he'll dunk on people. I mean, he's a really good player, man, and I think he's a keeper. His contract's going to be up not this year, but the year after this season, and I think that's somebody that they really want to give. If he's not on this team, I could see him really helping out a playoff. Like, I could see him playing really well next to Giannis.
He'd be an all-NBA player if he could go both ways, right?
If he could defend.
Hand, right?
Because he's a heck of a shooter. Yeah, he can dribble. He's a heck of a shooter. He's a heck of a finisher, man. Like, I don't want to, the whole white man can't jump thing. I'm trying to, break into that stereotype. But man, he can really sky, man. I like his game. He's like a super athletic Tim Legler kind of player. And like you brought up, Luke, Bilal and Denny, they can play, man. They just need an opportunity. They just need opportunities. Mm-hmm. Denny's getting better. Bilal's getting better. So those are the positives, I will say, for sure. So, but I like some of those young guys that they got right there. And it's really just about getting Bilal touches, getting him opportunities. He's a good defender too. So they just got to let him play and let him rock.
I don't know if you guys see this. Is some breaking news really quickly. So the Commanders hired Ken Norton Jr. as the linebackers coach, which is pretty great, actually. Former Raiders and Seahawks defensive coordinator. So that's good. That's interesting. Pretty good staff. I like it.
This is what they said when asked about Dan Quinn. They were excited about what the staff would look like that he could put together. And not that they're done, but you've noticed that it's taken a little bit of time for them to work through it in Seattle with McDonald, who may not have, obviously doesn't have quite the connections, at least in the NFL, that Dan Quinn does. Mm-hmm. All right, fellas, just wanted to pop that up there real quick before we got out of here. Lou, we appreciate, as always, your time.
Oh, man, thanks for having me on, man. I always like coming on. This is a great environment. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Lou. And Ed, of course, it's been too long. We'll have to do this again soon.
Definitely. Thank you, fellas.
All right,
take care, fellas.
Guys.
All right, bye.